Hello, and welcome to another effective episode here at Code Your English. I'm really happy that you are here with me today. This podcast is more than just about learning English. It's also about learning how to live a better, calmer, and more meaningful life. We all know that words and ideas go together. When we grow our English, we don't just grow our vocabulary. We grow our way of thinking, our way of seeing the world, and even the way we handle our daily struggles. And today's topic is one that touches almost every person, no matter where you come from, what language you speak, or what culture you are part of. We are going to talk about frustration, stress, and depression, how to understand the difference between them, and how to take back control of our lives. Now, why is this so important? Because we live in a very fast-paced world. Think about it. Everything is moving quickly. Technology is always changing. Work deadlines are shorter. People expect quick replies to messages, instant results, and constant productivity. Sometimes it feels like there is no pause button. And in the middle of this busy, noisy world, our emotions can feel heavy. We might get frustrated when something small doesn't work, like when our internet is slow. We might feel stressed when the responsibilities at school, at work, or at home pile up, and we don't know how to handle them. And sometimes, when these feelings stay with us for too long, they can sink deeper into depression, which can feel like a dark cloud that doesn't want to go away. But here's the thing. Many people confuse these three emotions. They think frustration and stress are the same, or they call depression just sadness. But if we don't really know what we are feeling, how can we deal with it in the right way? It's like trying to fix a broken car without knowing which part is broken. You might just keep changing the tires, when in fact the problem is the engine. In the same way, if we mix up frustration, stress, and depression, we might not give ourselves the care and solutions that we truly need. So, in this episode, I want to take you step by step. We will explore what each word really means in daily life. We will use examples that feel real, not just definitions from a dictionary. And most importantly, I want to invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Because this is not just about me talking. It's about you thinking, connecting, and maybe even recognizing yourself in the stories I share. Have you ever been so frustrated that you wanted to give up? Have you ever felt stress pressing on your chest like a heavy weight? Or have you ever noticed that your sadness is not just sadness? It is something deeper, something harder to escape? These are the kinds of questions that we will reflect on together. My goal is not to make this episode heavy or sad. Instead, I want it to be supportive, encouraging, and maybe even a little freeing. Because when you understand your emotions, you are not controlled by them, you are in control of them. And when you take control, life becomes lighter, easier, and more hopeful. That's the message I want to share with you today. So, take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and get ready to join me on this journey. What is frustration? Frustration is one of those emotions that almost everyone knows very well, but sometimes it is hard to describe. Simply put, frustration is that feeling you get when something is blocking you from reaching what you want. Imagine you are trying to open a door, but the key doesn't fit. You push, you pull, you shake the handle, but nothing happens. That growing sense of irritation and helplessness, that is frustration. It's not exactly anger, and it's not exactly sadness. It sits somewhere in between. It's the emotional signal that says, I want this to work, but it's not working. In daily life, frustration comes from many directions. One of the most common examples is traffic. You're late for work, or maybe you're excited to meet a friend. but the road is packed with cars moving slower than a snail. You check your watch, you tap your fingers on the steering wheel, you sigh again and again. Nothing changes, but inside, you feel that rising heat of impatience. That's frustration. Another common trigger is technology. Let's be honest. How many times have you tried to send an email or finish an important online form, only for your internet to suddenly stop working? You restart the computer, you refresh the page, but still nothing. Or maybe your phone battery dies right in the middle of a conversation. These are small problems in the big picture of life, but they can make us feel disproportionately upset because they interrupt our flow. Frustration also appears in more personal, meaningful situations. Think about when you study hard for a test, but the grade you get back does not reflect the effort you put in. Or when you spend hours practicing English conversation, but during a real conversation with a native speaker, the words just don't come out the way you expected. These are setbacks, moments where reality doesn't match our hopes. And because of that gap between what we want and what we get, frustration builds up. I remember once when I was trying to learn a new skill, cooking a complicated dish from a recipe. I followed all the steps, but somehow the food didn't taste right. It was bland, the texture was wrong, and I had spent so much time preparing it. I felt like throwing the whole thing in the bin. That's frustration in action. You invest energy, you expect a certain result, and when it doesn't happen, you feel blocked and annoyed. Looking back, I can laugh about it now, but at that moment, it felt like a big deal. That's how frustration works. It often makes small things feel bigger than they really are. What's interesting is that frustration can sometimes push us into very different directions. On the one hand, it can motivate us to try harder, to solve the problem, or to find a new path. For example, a student frustrated with poor grades might finally decide to change their study method, ask for help, or practice more consistently. On the other hand, frustration can also discourage us. If the same student feels frustrated again and again, they may start to believe that no matter what they do, they cannot succeed. And when frustration turns into hopelessness, that is when it can become dangerous, because it might lead to stress or even depression later. That's why it's important to recognize frustration early. It's a natural emotion. We all feel it, but the way we respond to it makes all the difference. Sometimes just naming it can help. Saying to yourself, "I'm frustrated right now," gives you a little bit of space between you and the feeling. It's like pressing pause before reacting. And in that pause, you can choose. Do I want to keep fighting this? Or do I need to step back and take a break? Frustration is also connected to expectations. The higher our expectations, the easier it is to feel frustrated. Think about perfectionists, people who want everything to be flawless. For them, even a small mistake feels like a disaster. That mindset almost guarantees frustration, because life is never perfect. On the other hand, if you can adjust your expectations, if you can accept that sometimes things will not go as planned, you can lower the power of frustration. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it just means you give yourself room to be human. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you felt frustrated? And how did you deal with it? Did you explode with anger? Did you give up? Or did you find a way to calm yourself down and try again? Think about that moment for a second, because the way you handle small frustrations says a lot about how you might handle bigger challenges in life. And remember, frustration itself is not the enemy. It's a message. It's telling you something about what you value and what you want. Once you understand that message, you can choose the right response. What is stress? Stress is another word that we hear almost every day, and sometimes people use it in the wrong way. Stress is not the same as frustration. While frustration usually comes from one specific situation that blocks us, like a slow internet connection or missing the bus, stress is more about pressure. It's the feeling that too many things are happening at once and you don't know how to handle them all. Stress feels like being pulled in different directions, or like carrying a heavy backpack that just keeps getting heavier with each new responsibility. One important thing to understand about stress is that it can be short-term or long-term. Short-term stress happens when you face a challenge or a deadline. For example, imagine you have an important exam tomorrow. You study late into the night. You review your notes again and again, and you feel your heart beating faster because you want to do well. That is short-term stress. It can actually be helpful in some cases because it pushes you to focus, to stay alert, and to use your energy. A little bit of stress before an exam, a job interview, or even a sports competition can give you the motivation to prepare and perform. But when stress stays with you for too long, it becomes long-term stress. And this is where the danger begins. Long-term stress happens when the demands on your life never stop. Maybe you have a heavy workload at your job, plus family responsibilities, plus financial worries, and you never get time to rest. Every day feels like a marathon with no finish line. In this situation, stress doesn't just affect your mind. It starts to affect your body. You might have headaches, trouble sleeping, or constant tiredness. Some people lose their appetite, while others eat too much as a way to cope. Over time, long-term stress can even weaken your immune system and make you sick. Let's think about some common examples. A university student might feel stressed during exam season, not just because of one test, but because of 3 or 4 subjects all at the same time. A parent might feel stressed when they have to balance work, paying bills, and taking care of children. An employee might feel stressed because their boss keeps increasing deadlines, expecting them to answer emails late at night, and never respecting personal time. In all of these situations, stress comes not from one small obstacle, but from an ongoing sense of being overwhelmed. What makes stress more complicated is how society often talks about it. In many cultures today, being busy is almost treated like a badge of honor. People brag about how little sleep they get, how many hours they work, or how packed their schedule is. You might hear someone say, "I'm so stressed. I have meetings all day." But they say it almost with pride, as if being stressed proves that they are important or successful. Social media also plays a role in this. When you scroll through platforms and see people working, studying, hustling, and never taking breaks, it can make you feel guilty for resting. The message becomes clear. If you are not busy, you are not doing enough. But the truth is, this way of thinking is dangerous. Stress should not be a status symbol. It is not something to admire or to wear like a medal. Stress is your body and mind telling you that you are under too much pressure. Ignoring that message or pretending it's a sign of strength only makes things worse in the long run. Remember, there is a difference between working hard for your goals and constantly living in a state of stress. One can make you stronger, the other can break you down. Another point to remember is that stress is not always visible. Sometimes people smile on the outside, go to work, and do their tasks, but inside they feel completely exhausted. We don't always see stress in others, and sometimes we don't even admit it to ourselves. We might say, "I'm fine, just a little tired," when in reality we are drowning under pressure. That's why learning to recognize stress early is important. Ask yourself, am I feeling tension in my body, Am I always thinking about work or responsibilities, even when I want to relax? Do I find it hard to enjoy things that used to make me happy? If the answer is yes, then stress might be controlling your life more than you realize. The good news is that stress, unlike depression, is usually manageable when you take the right steps. Taking breaks, organizing your tasks, saying no when your plate is already full, and finding healthy outlets like exercise or talking to a friend can all reduce stress. It doesn't mean your problems disappear, but it gives you space to breathe and to carry that heavy backpack more comfortably. So next time you feel overwhelmed, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this stress short-term, like before a test? Or has it become long-term, like a constant part of my daily life? That small reflection can make a big difference, because awareness is always the first step toward change. What is depression? Depression is a word that many people use, but not everyone truly understands. Sometimes people say, "I'm depressed," when they actually mean, "I'm sad," or "I'm tired." But depression is much deeper than that. It is not just about feeling down for a few hours or even for a couple of days. It is a long-lasting emotional struggle that affects the way you think, the way you feel, and even the way you live your daily life. If frustration is like hitting a wall, and stress is like carrying a heavy backpack, depression feels more like walking through a thick fog, where everything looks gray and nothing feels meaningful. One of the clear signs of depression is a loss of interest in things that used to bring joy. Imagine someone who once loved music, playing sports, or spending time with friends. When depression takes hold, those activities suddenly feel empty. It is as if the color has been drained out of life. Another common sign is a lack of energy. Waking up in the morning can feel like climbing a mountain. Even simple tasks, like brushing your teeth, cooking a meal, or answering a message, can feel exhausting. Depression makes ordinary life feel heavier, almost impossible to carry. The mind also changes during depression. Negative thoughts become louder, stronger, and harder to control. You might find yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough. Nothing will ever change." Or, "Why should I even try?" Self-doubt becomes constant, and hope feels very far away. Unlike stress, which often comes from external pressure, depression is more internal. It changes the way you see yourself and the world around you. And what makes it even more challenging is that these thoughts and feelings often repeat day after day, not just during a busy week or a difficult exam season, but for weeks, months, or even longer. It's very important to understand that depression is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not something you can simply snap out of by trying harder or forcing yourself to be positive. Depression is a real health condition. Just like the body can get sick, the mind can also get sick. And just like we wouldn't blame someone for catching the flu or breaking a bone, we should never blame ourselves or others for experiencing depression. In fact, blaming only makes the problem worse. What people need during depression is compassion, patience, and support. Think about how society often treats this subject. Many cultures still carry stigma around mental health. People might say, "Be strong," "Don't be dramatic," or "Other people have it worse." These words, even if they are meant to help, usually make the person feel more alone. When you are depressed, you already feel isolated, and hearing that others don't take it seriously can close you off even more. That's why conversations like this one are so important. When we talk openly about depression, we make it less of a taboo and more of something human, something that many people go through. You might be asking yourself, How do I know if what I'm feeling is depression or just sadness? That's a very good question. Sadness usually has a clear reason. Maybe you lost a job, failed a test, or had an argument with someone you care about. Even though sadness can be painful, it usually passes with time or with changes in the situation. Depression, on the other hand, often stays even when nothing specific has happened. It lingers, it persists, and it affects almost every part of your life. If you notice that you have been feeling hopeless, empty, or unmotivated for more than 2 weeks, that is often a sign to pay attention to. And here is something very important. If you think you might be experiencing depression, please remember that you do not have to go through it alone. Talking to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, or even a professional, can make a huge difference. Sometimes just sharing how you feel can take away a little bit of the weight. For many people, speaking with a counselor or doctor helps them find the right tools or treatment. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it is a sign of courage. It means you are taking responsibility for your health, just like you would if you had a physical illness. So, let me gently remind you, depression is real, but it is also treatable. People do recover, and life can become brighter again. If you are not experiencing depression yourself, but know someone who might be, the best thing you can do is to listen without judgment, show understanding, and remind them they are not alone. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, have you ever confused sadness with depression? Do you know someone who may be struggling quietly, even if they don't say it out loud? These are important questions because the more we recognize depression for what it truly is, the better we can respond with kindness and with care. How they connect. The slippery slope. When we look at frustration, stress, and depression separately, they might seem like 3 different experiences, and in some ways, they are. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice that they are deeply connected. In fact, one can lead to the other if it is not managed. Think of them like steps on a slippery slope. If you are not careful, you can slide down from one to the next without even realizing it. It often begins with frustration. You face a small obstacle, something doesn't go the way you expect, and you feel annoyed. Maybe you get frustrated when your internet connection fails while you are in the middle of an online class. Maybe you feel frustrated when your hard work at the office goes unnoticed, or when you practice English speaking but still struggle to find the right words in conversation. Alone, these moments of frustration are normal and natural. Everyone feels them. But if they happen again and again, and you don't deal with them in a healthy way, frustration starts to build up. When frustration keeps piling up, it often turns into stress. Imagine a student who fails a test. At first, they feel frustrated. I studied hard, but I didn't get the result I wanted. That's a natural reaction. But then, more thoughts start to appear. What if I fail the next test, too? What if I never pass this subject? What will my parents say? What about my future? Now the frustration of one test result grows into ongoing stress about school, about family, and about the future. Instead of one problem, the student now feels surrounded by many pressures at once. This is how the slope gets slippery. If the student does not find a way to manage that stress, by asking for help, changing study methods, or giving themselves time to rest, the stress can slowly slide into depression. Day by day, the student might lose interest in studying at all. They might think, why should I even try? Nothing works anyway. The energy disappears. The negative mindset takes over. And what started as frustration over one failed test has now turned into a deeper struggle with hopelessness. We can see this pattern in many areas of life. At work, an employee may feel frustrated because their boss ignores their ideas. Over time, the frustration grows into stress about going to work every day. If this continues for months or years, it can turn into depression, where the employee no longer feels motivated, no longer believes in their own value, and maybe even starts to think that life has no purpose. In relationships, a person may feel frustrated when their partner doesn't listen. That frustration, if repeated, becomes stress about the relationship itself. And without change, it may eventually turn into depression about feeling unloved or unwanted. The key point here is that none of these emotions exist in isolation. They are part of a chain. Frustration is like the first warning signal. Stress is the louder alarm. And depression is the result of ignoring those alarms for too long. It doesn't mean that every frustration automatically leads to depression, of course. Many times we deal with small frustrations and move on. But when we repeatedly push them down, deny them, or tell ourselves it's nothing, we allow them to grow stronger until they become something much bigger. This is why awareness matters so much. Think about your own life for a moment. Do you sometimes ignore small frustrations until they become bigger problems? Do you tell yourself, "I'll just handle it later," only to find that the pressure has multiplied? Most of us have done this at some point. It's human nature. But when we see the connection clearly, we realize that dealing with frustration early is not just about solving small problems. It's about protecting ourselves from larger struggles in the future. Another way to understand this connection is by imagining water dripping from a tap. One drop of water is nothing to worry about. But if the tap keeps dripping and no one fixes it, the sink might overflow. And if the overflow continues, it can damage the whole kitchen. Frustration is the drop, stress is the overflow, and depression is the damage if nothing is done. The earlier we act, the easier it is to prevent bigger consequences. So the question becomes, how do you respond to the first signs of frustration? Do you recognize them? Do you pause and give yourself space to breathe, to reflect, or to adjust your expectations? Or do you push them aside and let them grow into something heavier? Being honest with yourself here is powerful, because the slope only stays slippery if you keep ignoring it. If you catch yourself at the top, you can stop the slide before it even begins. Mindset and perspective. Taking control. When we talk about frustration, stress, and even depression, it can feel heavy. But here's the encouraging truth. We are not powerless in front of these emotions. They are real, yes. They are strong, yes. But the way we respond makes all the difference. And this is where mindset and perspective come in. If frustration is the spark and stress is the fire, then our mindset is the tool we use to control the flames before they spread. One of the most important mindset shifts we can make is moving from perfectionism to progress. Many people get stuck in perfectionism without even realizing it. Perfectionism is the belief that everything must be flawless, without mistakes, without failure. It sounds nice in theory, but in practice, it sets us up for endless frustration. Why? Because life is never perfect. No matter how hard you try, there will always be unexpected problems, delays, or errors. When perfectionists face these normal bumps in the road, they don't just see them as small setbacks. They see them as proof that they are not good enough. This quickly leads to stress, self-doubt, and eventually hopelessness. Progress, on the other hand, is about movement, not perfection. It's about asking, "Am I better than I was yesterday?" instead of, "Am I perfect today?" This shift in perspective changes everything. For example, think about learning English. If your goal is to speak perfectly, without a single mistake, you will probably feel frustrated very quickly. You might avoid speaking at all because you are afraid of getting it wrong. But if your goal is progress, improving little by little, step by step, then every conversation, even the ones full of mistakes, becomes a victory. Mistakes are not failures. They are proof that you are trying, and trying is the only path to growth. Consistency also plays a huge role here. Many times, we expect big results in a short time. We want to go to the gym once and suddenly be fit. We want to practice English for 1 week and suddenly sound fluent. When this doesn't happen, frustration grows. But the truth is, lasting change doesn't come from one big effort. It comes from small actions repeated consistently. Imagine a drop of water falling on a stone. One drop changes nothing. But drop after drop, day after day, the stone slowly changes shape. That's the power of consistency. If you read 1 page of an English book every day, if you write a few sentences in a journal each night, if you practice speaking for just 10 minutes regularly, the results will surprise you over time. Setting realistic goals is another key part of taking control. Unrealistic goals are like setting yourself up for disappointment. If you say, "I will study English for 5 hours every day," but you only manage 30 minutes, you will feel like a failure, even though 30 minutes is still progress. A realistic goal would be, "I will study for 30 minutes each day," and then anything extra is a bonus. By setting goals that match your life and energy, you give yourself more chances to succeed. Success builds confidence, and confidence reduces stress. It's also important to understand that mindset doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. Positive thinking is not about closing your eyes to reality. It's about choosing a healthier way to respond to reality. For example, if you fail a test, perfectionism might say, "I'm stupid, I'll never succeed." Progress thinking says, "I didn't do well this time, but I can change my method and try again." One mindset closes doors, the other opens them. Sometimes, taking control is also about knowing when to rest. We live in a culture that often glorifies constant action, working late, studying non-stop, always pushing. But rest is not laziness. Rest is part of progress. Just like muscles grow stronger when they have time to recover, our minds also need breaks to process and to heal. Giving yourself permission to pause is not weakness. It is wisdom. So as you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, what is my mindset right now? Do I demand perfection from myself in every situation? Do I see mistakes as proof of failure or as proof that I am learning? Am I setting realistic goals that I can actually reach? Or am I setting myself up for stress? And most importantly, am I choosing progress, little by little, over the impossible dream of perfection? The truth is, you cannot always control what happens to you, but you can control how you look at it. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. That is the power of mindset. Practical tools and everyday habits. When we speak about frustration, stress, and depression, it's easy to think that solutions must also be big or complicated. But the truth is, many small, simple habits can bring real change to our daily lives. These habits are like tools we can carry in our pocket. We may not be able to remove every problem from life, but with the right tools, we can manage them in healthier ways. The good news is that these tools are available to everyone, no matter where you live, how old you are, or what your background is. One of the most powerful tools is something we all do every day without thinking: breathing. It may sound too simple, but learning how to use your breath can calm your body and mind in just a few moments. When we are frustrated or stressed, our breathing becomes fast and shallow. This makes our body think we are in danger, which increases stress even more. By slowing down, taking deep breaths, and focusing on the air moving in and out, we send a signal to our brain. It's okay. I'm safe. For example, the simple technique of inhaling slowly for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and exhaling for 4 seconds can quickly reduce tension. It's something you can do at work, in school, or even while standing in line at the supermarket. Another helpful tool is journaling. Writing down your thoughts may sound old-fashioned, but it can make a big difference. When we feel overwhelmed, our mind can feel like a messy room, full of scattered objects. Journaling is like cleaning that room. Putting the thoughts onto paper gives them order. You may discover that something you thought was huge is actually small once you write it down. Or you may notice patterns like feeling stressed at the same time every day. Some people use journals to write 3 things they are grateful for each evening. This simple habit trains the brain to focus on the positive, even during difficult times. Exercise is another tool that is often underestimated. Many people think exercise is only about losing weight or building muscles. But in reality, it is one of the strongest natural medicines for the mind. When we move our body, whether it's running, dancing, swimming, or just walking, our brain releases chemicals that improve our mood and reduce stress. Think of exercise as pressing a reset button. You don't need a gym or expensive equipment. Even a 20-minute walk outside can help clear your head and bring fresh energy. Healthy conversations are also essential. When we feel stressed or low, there is a temptation to hide and stay silent. But talking to a trusted friend, family member, or mentor can be healing. Words are like bridges that connect us to others, and sharing how we feel reminds us that we are not alone. Sometimes, just saying your worries out loud makes them less heavy. And sometimes, another person's perspective shows us solutions we couldn't see on our own. Routines also play a powerful role in maintaining emotional balance. Life is full of uncertainty, and routines give us a sense of stability. Something as simple as waking up at the same time, drinking a glass of water in the morning, or reading a few pages of a book before bed can anchor the day. These small steps build structure, and structure makes it easier to handle challenges. Imagine routines as invisible walls that protect your energy. Without them, frustration and stress can enter more easily. With them, you have a safe space to recharge. Different cultures have their own ways of creating healthy habits. For example, in many Asian cultures, meditation is a daily practice. People sit quietly, focus on their breathing, and let thoughts come and go without judgment. This practice has been shown to reduce stress and increase focus. In many European cities, walking in nature is another common habit. People spend time in parks, forests, or along rivers. This connection with nature reminds us that life is bigger than our problems. These cultural examples show us that there is no single right tool. The best tool is the one that fits your life and makes you feel better. What's important to remember is that you don't need to do everything at once. Start small. Choose one tool, maybe breathing, maybe journaling, maybe walking, and practice it regularly. Over time, these small steps add up. Think of it like learning English. One new word each day may not seem like much, but after a year, you know hundreds of words. In the same way, one small habit each day builds emotional strength that can protect you in difficult times. So, as you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, which of these tools speaks to me the most? Could I take 5 minutes today just to breathe deeply? Could I start writing one page in a journal each evening? Could I go for a short walk after dinner? Could I call a friend and share how I feel? These small steps may look simple, but they have the power to create big change over time. Encouragement and self-reflection. Now that we've talked about frustration, stress, depression, and some practical tools to deal with them, I want to slow things down and speak directly to you, the listener. This is the moment in our conversation where I want you to stop just listening and start reflecting on your own life. Because the truth is, change doesn't come from hearing advice alone. It comes from asking yourself honest questions and making small but real decisions. So, let me ask you, what's one habit you can change today? Not tomorrow, not next month, not when life becomes easier. Today. It doesn't have to be something big or dramatic. In fact, small actions often bring the strongest results because they are realistic and sustainable. Maybe you could decide to take a 10-minute walk outside every afternoon. Maybe you could switch off your phone 30 minutes before going to bed. Maybe you could write down one thought in a journal before you sleep. Or maybe the habit you choose is as simple as pausing to take 3 deep breaths before answering a stressful email. These things may look small from the outside, but inside your mind and heart, they send a powerful message. I am taking care of myself. I am in control of my actions. Here's another question to think about. What small action could reduce your stress right now? Take a moment to imagine your current day or week. Where do you feel the most pressure? Is it at work? Is it in your studies? Is it in your family responsibilities? Picture one situation that usually makes you feel tense. Now, ask yourself, what is one tiny thing I could do differently in that moment? It could be breathing more deeply, changing the way you speak to yourself, or simply giving yourself permission to take a short break. Sometimes we think reducing stress means changing the whole situation, but often it just means changing our reaction to it. As you reflect, I want to encourage you to notice your emotions without judgment. Too often, we label our feelings as good or bad. We feel frustration and immediately think, "This is wrong, I shouldn't feel this way." We feel stress and say, "I'm weak for not handling it better." We feel sadness and believe, "I'm failing at life." But emotions are not enemies. They are signals, like traffic lights on the road. A red light doesn't mean the car is broken. It simply means pause, stop, and pay attention. In the same way, when you feel frustration, stress, or even sadness, it's not a sign that you are broken. It's a signal that something in your life needs attention. Consistency is key here. Taking care of your emotions is not something you do once and then forget about. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't do it just one time and expect your teeth to stay healthy forever. You do it every day because small, consistent actions create lasting health. The same is true for your emotional well-being. Breathing exercises, journaling, moving your body, talking to someone you trust, these only bring real results if you practice them regularly. It's the consistency that builds strength, not a single dramatic effort. And patience is equally important. We live in a world that glorifies speed. We want fast results, quick fixes, instant changes. But emotional growth doesn't work like that. Think of it like learning English. You don't become fluent overnight. You learn one word, then another. You practice one conversation, then another. Slowly, day by day, your fluency grows. The same is true with managing frustration, stress, and depression. Progress is not always visible immediately, but with patience, it will come. So I want to leave you with this encouragement. Don't underestimate the power of small, consistent steps. Even if you feel like you're moving slowly, Remember that slow progress is still progress. Be gentle with yourself. Notice your emotions without harsh judgment. Celebrate the small victories, like the one time you paused to breathe instead of snapping at someone, or the evening you wrote down your feelings instead of keeping them bottled up. These victories matter. As you listen to my words right now, maybe you can even pause and answer silently. What's one small action you can take today to bring yourself a little more peace? And when that question feels too big, narrow it down even more. What can you do in the next 10 minutes that would make you feel calmer, lighter, or more supported? That's how change begins, not with giant leaps, but with one mindful step at a time. As we come to the final part of this episode of Code Your English, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored today. We have discussed frustration, stress, and depression, and it's important to remember that each of these experiences is different. Frustration happens when things don't go the way we expect, and it often feels sharp and immediate. Stress occurs when we carry too many responsibilities or pressures at once, making life feel heavy and overwhelming. Depression goes even deeper. It is a persistent state that affects our energy, our interests, and the way we see ourselves and the world around us. Understanding the differences between these emotions is the first step toward managing them, because you cannot take control of something you do not recognize. The central message I want you to carry with you is this: your emotions do not have to control you. Life will always bring challenges, unexpected obstacles, and moments that test your patience. You will feel frustrated, stressed, or even sad at times, but you are not powerless. By becoming aware of your feelings, reflecting on them, and using practical tools like breathing, journaling, exercise, and small habits, you can respond in a healthier way. You can choose how to act, how to think, and how to care for yourself, even when life feels difficult. This is not about avoiding emotions or pretending they do not exist. It is about listening to them, understanding what they are telling you, and then making conscious choices that support your well-being. I also want to remind you that you are capable of change. No matter where you are today, no matter how heavy your mind or heart may feel, change is possible. It does not happen instantly, but it does happen through small, consistent actions over time. Think about learning English. No one becomes fluent overnight. Each word, each conversation, and each practice session adds up. The same principle applies to managing your emotions. Every time you pause to breathe instead of reacting, every time you write down your thoughts in a journal, every time you take a short walk or reach out to a friend, you are building strength, resilience, and self-awareness. These small steps matter, even if progress feels slow at first. So here is my gentle call to action for you. Take a moment to reflect on your own habits. What is one small action you could start today to take better care of your mind and emotions? Perhaps it is 5 minutes of deep breathing, a short walk outside, or writing one sentence in a journal. Share this episode with a friend or family member who might benefit from hearing these ideas. Conversations and shared experiences can bring comfort and insight. And most importantly, come back for the next episode of Code Your English, where we will continue exploring ways to grow, reflect, and improve together. Remember, every small step counts. You are not alone on this journey. You have the power to take control, to make changes, and to create a healthier relationship with your emotions. Be patient, stay consistent, and believe in your ability to grow. Life may bring challenges, but with awareness, action, and care, you can navigate them with strength and confidence. Until next time, take care of your mind, your heart, and your words. Thank you for sharing this hour with me here on Code Your English, a space where language meets life, reflection meets action, and your journey toward clarity and connection is always welcome. Take care of yourself, and until next time, keep growing with kindness, curiosity, and courage.